Again, you have heard that it was said to those of old, "You shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn." But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black, or let it grow at all. Welcome back to the King of the Cosmos, everybody. I'm so glad that you've joined us today in our study. We're continuing our study in the book of Matthew. Matthew is a very, very, very good gospel. They're all really good. But particularly because of the focuses that Matthew has in trying to convince his own Jewish brothers and sisters that Jesus is in fact the Messiah. He is the King of Israel, and Jesus fulfills all of the prophecies that were in the Old Testament. And Matthew's really trying to show that as we go throughout this whole study that we're doing. We're trying to make that very clear. We are in Matthew chapter 5, the Sermon on the Mount, one of the greatest sermon that has ever been preached in the history of humanity. Still studied today, because here we are. And in this section of the book of Matthew, in this Sermon on the Mount, the one thing that we're trying to get, many things we're trying to get across, but the one thing that we're trying to focus on is what is Jesus's main point in articulating the things that he's teaching in the way that he is. Why is he teaching these things? Well, Israel had lost its way, and so he tries to show the true way, and the true way is through a realization of our poverty of spirit, a brokenness over our own sin, to realize the true intention of the law was that we couldn't keep it. We never could, Gentiles or Jew. It does not matter. You can't keep it. And he really shows that by tightening the law. And specifically, when we got to anger and we got to lust, which we covered last time, he's trying to show the human impossibility for us to fulfill the law. He radicalizes it, and we should come out of this seeing that we can't keep God's law at all. We can try, but we fail. We fail every single time. And what had happened through the course of time was that man, specifically Israel, would reinterpret what the commands of God were actually supposed to be giving. Like, for example, when we went over anger, don't commit murder. Yeah, don't do that. But then we would take that, the Israelites would take that, and they would say, okay, well, I won't kill anybody, but I really hate that guy. No. That's exactly what you're not supposed to do. That command, do not murder, communicates all that it entails. Meaning, don't even go to the thing that leads to murder in the first place. Hatred, anger, and the same thing for lust. Adultery, don't commit adultery. Okay, but I'll look at that woman and I'll wanna do something to her. Well, that's the same thing. That's the same thing. It's the tightening of the law. It goes to the literally heart of the issue. And one thing that I didn't make clear last time that a brother of mine, he pointed out, I really should have mentioned this, and I should have, but, with a 52-minute program, when, it only has a few views on it, when every other program has had like 100 or 200 views, I couldn't fit it in. I just couldn't. One thing that he brought up that I want to bring up before we continue, about lust, okay? This is important, and it really is important. I should have included it. Lust itself is not the same thing as finding somebody to be attractive. Let's make a distinction right now. Men, because you're red-blooded, you can look at a woman and you can think, man, not bad. She's very attractive. And, the same thing for ladies. Ladies, you can look at a guy and you could say, hey, that's a good-looking guy. That, finding the attractiveness of another human being, the thing that, you desire to be with them, you want to be with them, you want to start a relationship with them, that's not a bad thing. The bad thing would be this. The bad thing would be to look at somebody and say, I don't want to be married to them, but I want to take part in that activity, that very good and holy activity that is only to be enjoyed within the confines of marriage. That's the difference between finding somebody attractive and lusting after them. You want to sleep with them. That's the difference. And so I didn't communicate that very clearly last time, but I wanted to make sure I communicated that clearly now. Okay, so where we are going now is Jesus is going to talk, we're going to cover two things today. Divorce and then oaths. This isn't going to be a long program. We're not going to get super deep into the details here, but I do want to be honest with the text, and I want to cover everything that's there. Oh yes, wonderful coffee, just wonderful coffee. Anyways, so divorce is in verses 31 through 32. It's just the two verses. We're just going to look at them really quick. It was also said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except on the ground of sexual immorality, makes her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. So, really quick, we see, first of all, you have heard it said. This has been your traditional interpretation, your traditional understanding of this passage or this saying, but Jesus brings in his own authority. But I say to you, not like a rabbi does, not like somebody else does. No. I'm giving you the interpretation of what that meant. He's giving his own authority. Where he's quoting is Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 1. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 1, and of course he's quoting from the Septuagint, and he's actually making it smaller just a little bit, but I'm gonna quote from it. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 1. When a man takes a wife and marries her, if then she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found some indecency in her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand and sends her out of his house, and she departs out of his house, and if she goes and becomes another man's wife, and the latter man hates her and writes her certificate of divorce and puts in her hand and sends her out of his house, or if the latter man dies who took her to be his wife, then her former husband, who sent her away in the first place, may not take her again to be his wife. After she has been defiled, that is an abomination before the Lord, and you shall not bring sin upon the land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance. I read 4 verses just there, but to stop at a comma, I never like doing that at all. I will continue to read until the flow of thought is finished. There is something said right at the beginning of that in verse 1. If a man finds something indecent in his wife. So, through time, the traditional interpretation, man's tradition, came in and said, well, hey, I just have to find something indecent in my wife, and I can divorce her for whatever I want. That was a popular opinion of Rabbi Hillel at the time. There was a big debate between Rabbi Shammai, I've got that right, Rabbi Shammai, and then Rabbi Hillel. And Shammai would say, no, you can only divorce for sexual immorality, for adultery. But Hillel would say, hey, if she burns the toast, okay, if she doesn't cook my favorite meal right, I can divorce her for whatever I want. It says it in the law. I can, if I find something indecent in her, I can divorce her. And, men are good lawyers, not just men in general, but mankind. We're good lawyers. If we want to find a way to do something, we are going to find a way to do something. That's just who we are. So Jesus had to come along, God in flesh, the one who wrote the law in the first place. He had to come along and said, no. The actual interpretation of that is not that just because she burns the toast or just because she does something that you don't particularly like doesn't give you the right to go ahead and break up the union that God has joined together. No. There's one reason. There is one reason that I'm going to give to you, and it's sexual immorality. But I say to you, verse 32, that everyone who divorces his wife, and then he gives the exception clause, saying that there is a reason for divorce. except on the ground of sexual immorality, makes her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. There's one reason. So, can you get a divorce just for any flippant reason at all? No. I mean, you look at the sad statistics and of how many divorces are taking place in the United States. And it is so sad. It is just sad. There's no commitment. There's no loyalty. It's a sad thing. It really is. But that doesn't mean that you can go ahead just because we're living in a day and time that's very irreverent when it comes to marriage. The holiness of marriage doesn't mean that we Christians get to act that way at all. You don't get to just get divorced for any reason. There is a reason, adultery, unfaithfulness, except on the grounds of sexual immorality, which isn't the best translation. Adultery really is the best one there. But anyways, okay, just wanted to hit divorce before we went into, it was only the 2 verses, and I know I'm going kind of fast, but when that thing called life comes around and you've got stuff on your schedule, it's time to get stuff done. Okay, and now we get into the next section that we're going to cover. Oaths. Jesus goes on to something else now. He goes on to oaths in verses 33 through 37 in Matthew chapter 5. Again, you have heard that it was said. There's that phrase again. I'm going to give you the traditional interpretation of X, of something. Ignore my phone. I'm going to give you the traditional interpretation of X, but I'm going to tell you what should actually be happening here, okay? Again, you have heard that it was said of those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black, or grow it back. Let what you say simply be yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. Now, that's a big term. Evil, 4-letter word, is a big term. For something to be accused as being evil, for the Lord Jesus Christ himself to say that this action is evil, means we should probably pay attention to the seriousness of what it is that is being accused of evil. And that is taking an oath in a wrong way. Let's back up a little bit. He quotes here, Leviticus chapter 19, verse 12. Let me go back there really quick. Leviticus 19, verse 12 says this. And I know I'm not bringing you up on Logos, but it's okay. You don't mind, do you? Thank you. You shall not swear by my name falsely, and so profane the name of your God. I am Yahweh. I am the Lord, is what he says there. Now, originally, how you take an oath is you involve God. You bring in God's personal name, Yahweh. Not just the title God. That's not his name. God's a title. It's the office he would occupy, if you want to think about it like that. God's not God's name. When it says in Exodus chapter 20, verse 7, don't take the name of the Lord your God in vain. What's that mean? Well, remember, the tetragrammaton's there, so it's actually God's name being used when you see capital L-O-R-D. It's Yahweh. Do not take the name of Yahweh your God in vain. And one of the ways that you can take it in vain is what? Using his name as a means of an oath, a vow, swearing by it, that you're going to do X, and then you don't do it. This is a big thing, and it's a lot bigger than we sometimes even talk about it, because this is a big thing for Jesus. It's a big thing for God. You were to do it. If you involved God in a covenant, in a promise, as a witness of a vow or an oath, There is a certain seriousness that is supposed to come out of that you are to do it. Numbers chapter 30, verse 2. Here's a good one for you. Came across this when I was studying this topic. Numbers chapter 30, verse 2 says this: if a man vows a vow to Yahweh or swears an oath to bind himself by a pledge, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth. So in the original context, when this was given, oaths, vows, swearing by, big thing. You were to keep it. You said you're going to do this, and you assured it by a vow or an oath. You were to do it. You were to do it. In fact, it was so serious that if you remember back in Judges chapter 11, Jephthah's harsh vow. Lord, tell you what, I'll make an oath with you. I'll make a vow. Whatever, if you give me this next battle, whatever walks out of my door, I'll sacrifice to you as a burnt offering. And who walks out? His own daughter. And of course, he was just distraught, and he was in pieces because he knew exactly what that meant. He knew what he would have to do. And so that's exactly what he did. He sacrificed his daughter. He had a vow, and he fulfilled his vow. Now, we're not going to get into the debate between, well, did he really sacrifice her or did he not? No, that's not the purpose. The purpose is the rashness, the flippancy, the seriousness of giving a vow and taking an oath. It's not something that's just, you just do it. I remember before I was a Christian, I would make promises all the time. I would say promise. And you probably have done that too, right? How many times have you broken a promise? If you're like me, you've broken a lot of promises. I know I've broken a lot of promises. Even since becoming a Christian, there have been times when I've promised to do something and then I failed to do it. That's wrong. That's wrong. It needs to be repented of. It's sin. It's a wicked thing. Why? Why is it such a serious thing? We'll get into that here in a second. We'll get into that because we're going to answer a question here in a second. But, okay, so originally we have the seriousness of an oath, a vow. But then through time, what Israel would do is, well, if you want to make a vow, if you want to make an oath, okay, but you don't want it to be too serious, you don't want to involve God, well, what would you do? Well, don't swear by God's name. Swear by, what are the examples he gives here? Swear by heaven, or by not God, but the throne that God sits on, or by the earth, or by Jerusalem. You see what's going on? Avoiding trying to get God into this. You'd swear by everything else but God because you wanted to make a vow, you wanted to make a promise, but you didn't want it to be too serious because, hey, if you failed to keep it, you didn't want to feel too guilty and have to repent. But then Jesus comes along and says, no, that's ridiculous. How can you swear by the earth? God made the earth. It's his footstool. How can you swear by Jerusalem? It's the city where God anointed a king, his king that he appointed. It doesn't solve anything. You're still shooting yourself in the foot, in a way. So Jesus says, okay, this is what you are to do. Don't make an oath. It's just easier not to do it. It's easier for the Christian to just don't agree to something. Don't say promise. Don't say you have my word or something like that if you're not 100% sure that you can fulfill whatever that is. In fact, Jesus goes another step and says, just don't promise at all. He says, let what you say simply be yes or no. I know I'm hiding behind the mic here, and I'm sorry about that. I don't want you to see me. Just let your word be yes or no. and leave it at that. Why? Why leave it at that? Because the kind of Christian, the kind of character that encompasses the life of a Christian, as we're continuing to be sanctified every single day, we're becoming more and more like Jesus. The kind of character that a Christian has is one of honesty and one of integrity. If you say you're going to do something, do it. You shouldn't need the extra caveat. I promise. You have my word. This. You shouldn't need any of that. Because who you are as a follower of Jesus Christ, denying yourself every day, living for Him, seeking the best for others around you. If you say yes to something, you're gonna do the best you can, because when you said yes, you mean yes or no. If you said no, you meant no, and that's it. So, thus brings up the question: are oaths and vows a bad thing inherently? Well, no. Because who makes oaths? Who makes vows? What's another word for that? Promise. What's another word for that? Covenant. God makes covenants. God makes covenants with His people all the time. All the time throughout. There's many different covenants that have happened in the Bible. God makes covenants. It's not a bad thing, because God can keep up His end of the bargain, and we're not too good at that, are we? But, what about... So they're not bad inherently. But then naturally in our own minds, in the context of America, we like to think, well, wait a minute. Hey, what if I'm in court? What if I'm in court and they're wanting me to take an oath? Remember, put your hand on the Bible. You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth. I'll see if I can find that clip of the Three Stooges. Insert clip here.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Huh? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Are you trying to give me the double talk?
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Why don't you answer him?
He's talking pig Latin. I don't know what he's saying.
He's asking you if you swear.
No, but I know all the words.
And we naturally think about that in connection with this. And that's a good thing. That means we're thinking. That's a good thing. But it's not the same thing. Being placed under oath in court and you taking upon yourself an act of oath or vow are different things. They are. And we know this because Jesus was placed under oath in court. You remember this? Matthew chapter 26. I can't wait until we get into more Matthew. We're only in Matthew chapter 5. We're going to be in Matthew for a while, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Matthew chapter 26, when Jesus is before the high priest, he says in verses 63, let's start at verse 63. But Jesus remained silent, and the high priest said to him, I adjure you by the living God. There it is. I'm placing you under oath. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus said to him, you have said so. But I tell you, from now on, you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. Amen. I can't wait to get into that. That's going to be nice. That's a reference to Daniel right there. He was placed under oath, and he made good on it. Being placed under oath in a court setting by governing powers, so to speak, it's different than you taking on an active oath. So if you're ever in court and you have to swear, I wouldn't worry too much about that. It's more talking about our everyday lives, and especially making a promise or an oath when you bring God into it. All promises, even if you don't mention God's name, the reality is any promise that's made, any oath, any vow, automatically brings God into it. Because God is a God of covenants. He's a God of agreements. He's a God of promises. And he makes good on his promises. So what should his people be like? Naturally, he takes it seriously. And so when a promise is made, God's a witness. There's no way for him not to be a witness. He's omniscient. He knows everything that happens. He's there as a witness whenever a promise is made. You have my word, whatever it is. He's there as a witness. So, how should we treat oaths? Don't make them. Don't make them, of course, unless you're in court. And I know that there's tons of stuff that I could be saying on this, but I'm just not able to get into absolutely everything that needs to be said on this. But just don't do it. Follow the instruction of the Lord. Let your yes be yes. Let your no be no. In fact, I didn't quote from the Lord just now. I quoted from his brother, James. James chapter 5, I believe. James chapter 5, where James, the brother of the Lord, says this, "But above all, my brothers," very important, above all, "but above all, my brothers, do not swear, either by heaven or by earth or by any other oath, but let your yes be yes, and your no be no, so that you may not fall under condemnation." Very important stuff. Very important stuff. Jesus ripping into the traditional interpretations of men, religious men who started out, they wanted to glorify God and worship him and restore true worship to God. Well, now they've set up traditions that are unbiblical, and Jesus is in the middle of dismantling them. And next time we're going to, I don't know if we're going to cover retaliation or retaliation and love your enemies. The two next things, therefore finishing up Matthew chapter 5. I'm not sure. But regardless of what happens, it'll be awesome either way, because it's always awesome. This is just a great study. Well, thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope that you've been blessed by this study. I hope that the work that we do here is blessing you. Quick word. Please share the messages. Please share the Wednesday night stuff that we do here at KOTC. Our sermons, our Bible classes that we do, share them all. In fact, especially the Bible class. If you haven't been paying attention to Ted July's Bible class, Exodus, the 10 Commandments, him going over all that, we went over civil law and ceremonial law and moral law. Oh man, it was good. You need to be paying attention to those, and you need to be sharing those, because just good stuff. So, please share our messages. Let them get out to many people. Let it bless many people. And thank you all for tuning in. I hope you have a great day. I hope that your walk with the Lord is going well and that he is strengthening you, and you are walking with him always. So take care. God bless. Love you all. And I will see you Sunday. Okay?